Welcome to Innovation Day 2023, presented by Connect. We've got such an incredible array of things happening here, supporting the life sci and tech communities in San Diego.
Our two guests, founders of life sciences companies in San Diego, Suckow with DTX Pharma, and James Mackay with Aristea Therapeutics. Both will be sharing with you their entrepreneurial journey, launching life sciences company in San Diego.
Okay, thank you. So thanks everyone for joining us. So I'll kick off. So Artie, first of all, welcome to Innovation Day San Diego. Looking forward to having a chat with you and sharing with people about the amazing San Diego innovation story of DTX Pharma, where you went from founding the company in 2017 to an acquisition by Novartis a mere 6 years later. So maybe we'll start by, can you just tell me a little bit, or tell the audience a little bit, about your career and how that kind of carved out the path to founding DTX?
Absolutely. So I actually started my research career here in San Diego at UCSD, and it was sort of that, during that time I sort of got the itch to be an entrepreneur. There was kind of an idea that came out of my, what do they call it, minor proposition, and that sort of became a company, but I was too probably junior, inexperienced to lead that company. But I always, when I started when I left UCSD, I had always known I wanted to start a company. And so one of the reasons I went to J&J to start my career was to learn about drug development. I then moved from there to AstraZeneca. They were starting a group, a local company here in San Diego. You know, they were a true biotech, and so I was really excited. That didn't pan out so well, but excited about that. So sort of, you know, at each stage was thinking about what's next on the...
Yeah, and what did you learn as you were moving through those aspects of your career? And I guess specifically, as you said, your first company wasn't successful. You know, what did you learn from that? What did you learn from the rest of your career that helped you with DTX Pharma?
Yeah, so I think, well, I mean, I think one of the themes throughout my career, and even part of our relationship, has been I've been fortunate enough to find really good people who supported me. And so at J&J, I was really lucky, you know, because I was a postdoc and then a scientist. I had managers who, you know, let me lead a project that exposed me to early development, safety, toxicology, IP, business development. So, you know, that was awesome. I learned a ton there, and really sopped up a ton of information through the project leadership role. AstraZeneca was probably more about starting a company within a company. I know you were there at the same time as me, but literally they were trying to start a diabetes franchise and do it from, you know, the ground up. And so having empty labs, I was the second person to join that group. I learned all about, ICOOK protocols and capital expenditures, and then I got to pick the projects that I got to lead and work on and develop relationships with the clinical teams and such. So those were really important, at least to develop the foundation to start a company, to do drug development. Regulus Therapeutics, as my career was evolving, I was on this mission to start a company myself, and it was all about gaining experience at each stop. And Regulus, the dream was that I was going to be at a small biotech, I was going to learn how to fundraise, I was going to do business development, but pretty much from the first day, they were on a very steep downhill trajectory. So I think what I learned there was, what was the first time I'd ever failed in my career, and that was probably the most frustrating, but probably the experience I learned the most from, because I think I learned what not to do, at least on like people and management and culture. And then, you know, there's the other part of what did I learn from those experiences, and that's the foundational science that drove me to found DTX. And maybe we talk about that, maybe we don't, but you know, I worked on different modalities, not RNA therapeutics, which is what DTX is all about, at those, and that was part of the inspiration as well.
Yeah, no, excellent. So the DTX story is really a story of deep engagement with the San Diego life science ecosystem. So your first engagement was with J Labs. Would be interested to to understand that story and how JLabs, helped you in the career. And then the second thing, is you obviously participated in the Connect Springboard program, which I know from the many discussions that you and I have had was truly a springboard for DTX. And would love to hear that story and what you learned from being part of that mentoring program at Connect.
Yeah, so I think JLabs was really cool for me for a couple of reasons. One, I actually started my career in biotech at the San Diego site where JLabs was founded, on the opposite side of the building. So, and I don't know why, but I always held J&J on a pedestal. I loved working there. I would have stayed there forever if they kept the diabetes group in San Diego, but they wouldn't. They moved it to Springhouse, Pennsylvania. But I think, what J&J provided was initial credibility that, even if I didn't have a fully baked idea when I went there, that it was credible and worth exploring. And then, come to Connect, as you know from the first company that I founded, Tim Scott, who is a champion of Connect and UCSD and San Diego Science, he kept saying, you've got to apply to this program. You're a perfect candidate for this program. And so I applied, and there was probably 4 or 5 experts in the room. As Petra, I don't know where she is, but she'll tell you, they rejected me. But fortunately, there was someone in that room, his name was James Calloway, who saw some potential. And so they came up with a deal, Petra and James, where he would mentor me for a couple months, and then I would reapply to the program. And so, what was the experience like? Why was it so important to DTX's success? The experience was James Calloway was a CEO of multiple companies in San Diego, many of which you probably have heard of. He went to pitches with me, practiced pitches with me, introduced me to who was our initial chief technology officer. I had a team that I met weekly with, Ani Ganel, who had no experience in biotech, was great at business development and relationships, and he introduced me to the CSO of Lilly, which was one of our lead investors, or co-lead investor with Jeff Friedman. Connect also provided me with public speaking training. What I remember most is the power pose and how you walk into a room, but I got 8 weeks of public speaking training. And I think what it brought was, credibility. It was sort of our first management team, if you will, because I worked with these people every day every week for 6 months. They introduced us to investors, our first investors. And so I think credibility, and then for me personally, confidence to keep going to bring DTX to its rightful end, which I didn't know at the time was an acquisition. But.
Yeah, good. So when you graduated from Springboard, that was the day that you and I met each other for the first time, and I remember that you immediately asked me to mentor you, and that was the start of a 6-year journey together. So if you look back in those early days, do you have any advice for first time, or you're actually second time CEO, about what to look for from a mentorship perspective?
Yeah, I think one of the things I always knew is that if I was going to be successful, I had to surround myself with people who had been there and done that, and a couple times. And so, I think that's really important, to know what you don't know, and then fill in those gaps with people who do know. The second thing that's really important is the person that is your mentor should be in it for the right reasons. I met a lot of people over the course of DTX that just wanted like $1,200 an hour to hang out with me. And
I never charged you anything.
No, actually, we were just talking how I owe you more.
That was a big mistake.
That's true. But so I think that was important. And then I think what I really liked about you was in it for the right reasons. You clearly had experience managing people. You'd been there and done that. You were selfless, and so and obviously you had the right experience. So that's what I looked for. I think since we want to get a little bit out of James today, I think I want to turn it around a little and ask you, when you're looking to mentor, you're looking to join boards, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so, well, let me tell you what I'm not looking for to begin with. And this happens a lot. So often, young first-time entrepreneurs, will come to me and, ask me to mentor them. And all they want to do is talk about the science, which is fine, and the science is important. But what they're missing is that that's not where I can add the value. I can add value around, how you can grow as a leader, how you can evolve your organization, how you can develop your business plan. And often they actually don't want to hear that. So those are the people that I don't end up mentoring. The ones that I do end up mentoring are, first of all, people that have got smart ideas, that do have good science, because there's got to be a basis to that. But most importantly, people that are self-aware and are coachable. A lot of people are not self-aware and coachable, and I'll tell you a little anecdote from my first discussion with Artie. When we sat down for the first mentoring session, the first question that he asked me was, when will I know when I need to replace myself as the CEO? And I kind of rocked back on my chair and thought, that's incredible insight for a young entrepreneur. And I realized at that moment in time that this was going to be a long, long relationship that we had together. And it turned out to be exactly that.
And it's not over.
So maybe talk a little bit about fundraising. So you went through multiple rounds of fundraising, from initial angel funding by New Fund. You had some SBIR grants. Jeff Friedman led the Series A, which was, I think, a $10.6 million. You had a $100 million Series B. And you were also negotiating a very large Series C when Novartis came in and acquired the company. You got any advice for entrepreneurs, particularly in this very difficult environment of raising money? How should they go about that? What are the do's and don'ts?
Yes, and feel free to chime in after I do this. So I was thinking about this morning, and I called it art. And it's, the key words I would say are adaptability, resilience, relationships, and transparency. And what I mean by adaptability is, and resilience is, you're going to hear no 99 out of 100 times, and you have to, listen when you're pitching someone to the feedback you're getting, the questions that you're getting, and you have to flip the script and use that why are people saying no? I always say, let's go on offense, as Pete will know, because we were changing the story every week, every couple days, based on the feedback we were getting. And so I think adaptability, so you have to be willing to change, you have to address the gaps, you can't be stubborn, you have to fill in the unanswered questions that come up over and over again, and they will. Relationships, I think, you can't think of raising money as, hey, Pete, I want $10,000 and I'm going to get it from you today. It's not like that. It takes a year, 2 years, 3 years to develop relationships, go back to those people with updated data, with new developments, check in with them all the time. Ask them for critical feedback. Why are you saying no today? And then, use that when you go back to them. And so relationships are really important. And then I think transparency is critical. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid to show their cards or show their data or open up, and that's not my style. I don't think that works. It raises flags and suspicion. So I think
they find you out eventually, right?
And you have to be honest about the warts and just say the strategy to overcome them. And then I definitely think you might have more to add to this. So maybe.
Yeah, I agree with all your comments. It really is about developing relationships over time, and you really have to be resilient and tenacious. It's 95% of the people you talk to are going to say no to you. So we used to pitch 6 times a day, and my wife would say, how did the pitching go? And I'm like, they all said no, right? But we went back and did it again the the next day. And when we raised our Series B at Aristea, it was a very difficult time to raise money again. And our lead investor, who we nearly never took the meeting with because we didn't think they would be interested in us, was our 132nd pitch that we did. And they led the investment with a $25 million investment into the company. So you never know where the money's going to come from. You never know where you're going to align with the investor. So I would say to everybody, take every damned meeting that you can get and listen and learn from it. And don't get upset when somebody says no. It may not be a problem with you. It may just be that it's just not the right fit for them.
And I'll just echo that even in our successful Series C and Novartis acquisition, it was probably the 70th or 75th meeting that we took before we got our first term sheet. So resilience is important.
Yeah, no, I agree. So if you think about DTX and the sort of, as I know from our discussions, I mean, the company went through multiple evolutions over the 6 years from, I think you and Jill Magnus as the original team through to, I can't remember how many people you had at the end, but it was a significant organization. And, I know you approached those evolutions in a very thoughtful way. Do you want to talk about how you did that and what you learned from it and what you might do differently in next time round?
Yeah, I mean, I think with respect to company building, I think the thing that probably you and others told me really early on was that people is the hardest part of company building, and that 95% of your time is going to be managing people. And it's true, and there's all sorts of reasons. And so,
you didn't believe that to begin
no,
as a scientist, did you?
I do not believe you. I still don't want to believe you, but I know it's true. So I think the biggest learning I had over time is it's really important to be philosophically aligned with the people that you're working with, that you actually like to work with them, because I don't know, once a month, once every 2 weeks, there's a challenge, there's a problem, and you've got to go into those meetings and work with these people, and you have to do it with an open mind. You have to be willing to listen to others' ideas, others' thoughts, because that's what gets you to the best strategy. So I think, that's obviously important learning. I think the other thing that it wasn't always easy is that you really want to hire people who are not afraid to tell you what they think. Because you can't address the challenge or the problem if you don't know what you're trying to solve, whether that's the data, whether that's, someone was fighting with someone at the company. So I think, people, management, hiring the right people. And then I think the other two things, we always talk about is you can't be afraid to hire people that are better than you at something, or everything for that matter. So I had to open my mind to that. And then the other thing is you have to empower those people to do their jobs. There were times at DTX which we worked through together where, I'm a scientist. I want to be in the day-to-day science meetings. I thrive in those meetings. It gives me the most energy. But at the same time, I hired a CSO, and that was going to be his job. And for the first, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, I was really frustrated because I wasn't getting anything out of him. But that's because everyone was turning to me for questions, because that was the history of the company. And so I figured out, with help from James, maybe he figured it out.
I told you.
Something like that. And I removed myself from those meetings, and we saw immediate impact.
I said to Artie, because he was talking to me about how he could make this work, and I said, you need to stop attending those meetings, because you're stifling your staff by being there, and you stopped attending them, and it worked. So. And I think, from my perspective, in terms of building teams, I agree with you. You need to hire. I always say you need to hire people who make you feel uncomfortable, and who'll be prepared to challenge you, because then you'll get a much better, product at the end of the discussion. And I think you really need to care for the people you work for, and I don't just mean the staff. I mean their broader families, and be flexible to support them. And if you give people the flexibility that they need, then my philosophy is you'll never need to ask them to do anything because they know it needs to be done, and they're gonna do it. So. Yeah, but it's really important to do it because if you don't get it right, then it's going to consume even more of your time. Maybe talk to me a little bit. Let's move to patients because I know both you and I, as drug developers, are very passionate about this. Can you talk a bit about what inspired you to develop DTX into the indications that you developed the company to focus on?
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure you've experienced as well, we had a great technology. Early on, I think it was great. but I think the biggest problem was finding a killer app for that technology. And so, fortunately, after beating my head against the wall, reading every scientific paper in RNA therapeutics for the last 15 or 20 years, we missed one, and I discovered that one through a meeting with the foundation who was trying to put, their, indication to the top of the list. And, from that day, we literally started doing science that night. I sent it back to the patient. And so I think one of the, things that, kept us really excited about DTX was because of the way that that particular indication came to us. We developed a relationship with the patient community.
Yeah.
And maybe for the first time in my career, because I worked in diabetes and obesity, I really was inspired by the patient. And we had like a wall of patients. We had patients come to DTX for our Christmas parties and stuff. And so I don't know, that like from now on, I only want to work on diseases with high unmet medical need, because and the patient has to come first. And we talk a lot about that. I know you can say a lot more about that because you're in the clinic all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I can take you back to my first drug project. I worked for AstraZeneca for 30 years. My first drug project was Seroquel, which was the treatment for schizophrenia. And I'll always credit the clinical research associate, who was, the lowest member in the team. When I arrived, he said to me, the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to go visit a mental health unit. And that had a profound impact on me. And this was a completely locked up unit with people who were very, very sick in there. But it made me realize what the unmet medical need was, and that really drove us through to, to take Seroquel through to approval, which ended up becoming AstraZeneca's biggest selling drug, and still helps millions and millions of people. I remember I was sitting in a movie theater once with my wife, watching a film, and Bradley Cooper was the lead in the film, and he actually took out his Seroquel tablets. And honest to God, I felt the shiver go down my spine, and I nearly wanted to stand up and say, I was part of the team that developed that drug. And then he went on and said some nasty things about the drug, so it was probably just as well I didn't.
Well, I think, that was what was so, the inspiration, how hard days are in drug development. There are more hard days than fun days.
Yeah.
And like to think about these patients like Carter and Stella, these kids that couldn't ride their bikes, and why I was doing this, and to power through, like those stories really helped.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you and I both know the CEO is a very, very lonely place at times, and you need those things to carry you through. So let's talk about something more positive. Let's talk about the amazing Novartis acquisition, how that came about. Any advice for people about how you manage pharma companies' interest, and maybe also talk about the fact that you were actively raising your Series B at the same time and had to make some difficult phone calls to those investors, and how you have managed to hopefully maintain those relationships.
Yeah, so I think, my approach in general to fundraising, I boil it down to optionality. And so throughout the history of DTX, I had always been convinced that you needed to develop relationships both with investors and with pharma partners. And you had to kind of follow the interest, if you will. Both can invest money. You're always going to give up something, whether it's equity or the program, to get it over the finish line. So as Pete, our CBO, who was critical in driving this deal on a day-to-day basis over the finish line, can attest to, we were always running a soft dual track process at DTX, and I felt like the competitive tension between pharma and investors would maximize value, and forgetting about value, make sure that this saw the light of day. And then with respect to Novartis, Pete and I, after God knows how many meetings and sitting in his office every night, both of our wives screaming at us to come home on how we were going to get the Series C done. We finally got I think it was, a reverse merger term sheet and our first Series C term sheet. And Pete went, called all the farmers and said, "Are you interested in joining the term sheet to invest?" Novartis, essentially told us to wait over the weekend. They came back on, I think it was like March 27th or March 24th, and they said, "We want the whole company." And so I wish it was that easy on that day, but because for the next, probably until July 14th, we were never sure this was going to close. And we went to bed a lot of nights thinking, we got to prepare to do the Series C, we got to hire the CMO, we got to get this into clinical development. Had to keep the Series C process going throughout that whole time period without showing any cards that we were doing a potential acquisition. So yeah, it was definitely a stressful process.
I think the important word you used there was optionality. Always have to give yourself that. So final questions as we wrap up. You've had a lot of experience over the last few years. What's the one bit of advice that you would give yourself if you were back at the beginning of the DTX journey?
We should both do these last three. Trust your instincts. I think where I made mistakes, and I made a lot of them, I go back and do the, as James knows, and even on the success of DTX, I spend more time thinking about how I would do things better. I think trust my instincts. There are a lot of, let's say, hires that I made where I caved into the pressure, the time pressure, things I screamed at my old bosses for doing just to get it done and check a box and move on. And I would just say, trust your instincts. They're usually right. And don't worry about the pressure. Nothing is worse than regretting.
And I would say something similar. It's probably the same as trust your instincts, which is just do the right thing. Do what you think is right, and eventually it'll work out. So, what's next for Artie?
Yeah. So I'm not that far along. There's three things that I know. One, the San Diego ecosystem, the San Diego community has been really good to me. So I definitely want to share that experience and mentor other people by joining boards and such. Same with the patient groups, the foundation that I work with, the Charcot-Marie-Tooth Research Foundation. This isn't public knowledge, it's not supposed to, but I'll share it with you guys. We'll keep it in San Diego. I'm going to join their board because I promised them that I would not retire until I developed a drug for that indication.
That's great.
And then last but not least, I'm going to start another company in San Diego, hopefully in 2024, what do I want to, I want to, work, I want to stay in San Diego. Do you see how I'm dressed? This is how I go to work.
You got to show them the back of your shirt as well, right? And the 17s for 2017 when the company was founded. So.
Yeah, and so, I'll leave it, and I think you should answer this question as well before we go or wrap up. I'll just leave it at, I really feel passionate about sharing the San Diego talent, elevating San Diego, because it is the best place to be an entrepreneur in life sciences. Full stop.
Yeah, so I'll say the same thing. Staying in San Diego, it's the best place to be an entrepreneur. All I want to do is, help other entrepreneurs to do it by mentoring, sitting on boards, and I also am going to set up a new company as well. So keep your eye on both of us, and we'll be resurfacing soon. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great
everyone.
big thank you to James and Artie. Thank you for joining us.
I really feel passionate about sharing the San Diego talent, elevating San Diego, because it is the best place to be an entrepreneur.